Yes, sir. I was asked last week, or I was told last week, that I was going to be up here. So I didn't really give a whole lot of concern to it. Wasn't worried, but as the time got closer, it kind of started getting to me. And but I have been reading through Joseph, and I mean through Genesis, and I landed on Joseph as something that I want to talk about. As I was dealing with the text throughout the week, I just wasn't getting that passion that I wanted to come up here and bring forth the word, but we're going to go through it anyway. And so instead of starting with Joseph, I want to go back a little further, and I want to look at the dynamics of Joseph, the dynamics of which is underlying in his life, which brought him to where he was. And so when I was thinking about this, the dynamics of Joseph, it's going to be, Lord willing, I don't know if this is going to be a series, but in my head, I was thinking this is three things that we're going to see and deal with in this text. The first thing is going to be dysfunction or dysfunctional family. The second one's going to be detour. And then the third one is going to finally be destination. And as I was trying to deal with this, I was like, just focusing on Joseph, I was thinking maybe just son, slave, and savior, but God just had a way of scrapping that, and here we're at today is the dynamics of Joseph in three parts. So hopefully this you're able to glean from it as I was. I kept just reading through the text, and we all have dysfunction within ourselves or within the family. And just to bring out the definition of dysfunctional, it means not operating normally or properly, deviating from the norms of social behavior in a way regarded as bad. So I have a cell phone sitting over there, and I could say that's a dysfunctional cell phone because it doesn't operate normally or properly. I can hit the button, it takes a while to get up and glow or call a number. So a lot of times with us, we don't function normally. We are in a society, in a world that is sin sick, and they would rather have us do things that are opposite of good, which is normal to them. And so when we're doing good and we're Christians, we look dysfunctional, but it's just the opposite. The world is dysfunctional, and we are part of that. And so we deal with dysfunction. So I want to look at some things that as I was just reading throughout the week, I jotted down to help us get a better understanding of dysfunction and some characteristics that we may see in a dysfunctional family. And it could be all of them, or it could just be one or two, but we're going to definitely see all of these dysfunctions in this family. And as we go through, I'll point them out to us. So in order to really get into the meat of Joseph and his dysfunctional family, I think we're going to go further on back to Jacob, where this dysfunction actually started taking place. Actually, as I was preparing to bring the word, I actually started from Adam and built my way all the way up to show dysfunction, but I was like, that's too much. That's a lot. We'd be here for a long time. So I decided we'll start with Jacob. And we're going to actually start in chapter 29. But before we get there and start to reading, let's build up what Jacob had to go through. Jacob was the son of Isaac, which was the son of Abraham. And this promise was going to go through a lineage. And so Jacob, where we're about to read, he's actually fleeing a dysfunctional situation and about to head into another dysfunctional situation. He doesn't know it yet, but he's going to. Jacob has a brother named Esau. Now these were twins. As their mom, Rebecca, was pregnant, she was dealing with the pregnancy and said, something's wrong here, something's not right, there's a lot of struggle in her stomach. Back then they didn't have sonograms and they didn't have the doctors that we do now, so they didn't really know that there was two children in there. God revealed it to him. He said, there's two nations in your belly, and they're fighting. And the younger is going to conquer over the older, or the older will serve the younger. And so it happened just like that. The dysfunction began almost immediately after birth. Jacob, the name Yaakov, means supplanter or heel holder. And this is also known as a deceiver or a trickster. And you'll see that come into play as we read through the story. Esau means hairy. He came out really hairy, so that just stuck with them, hairy, and so that's how they were on getting about together. So now it comes to Isaac and Rebekah raising their children, And here's where you really see the dysfunction kick in, because they begin to have favorites. And so when I think of this, I think of, I don't know if you watched this stuff, but the Property Brothers. They're two twins and they look alike. One does one thing, the other does the other. So I was like, these are twins. They look alike. One's just hairy, one's probably not as hairy. But, in the Property Brothers, one is working on the outside, building and constructing the house, while the other's on the inside, designing and getting all that together. Just like this, Esau is a kind of like a man's man. He likes to hunt, do things outdoors, and this becomes quickly his dad's favorite. And Jacob is just the opposite. He's more of a homebody, likes to cook, do things inside the house. So that became mom's favorite. And so the story goes, as they got older, Esau's out there hunting, doing his thing, providing for the family. Jacob is inside cooking, making some stew. And this is the first scene we're going to get where we can kind of see Jacob's trickery. Esau comes in, he's hungry, he's tired, and he's like, hey man, give me some of that lentil soup. I'm starving, I'm hungry. And Jacob, he's like, well, if you can just pass over that birthright, I'll gladly give you a bowl of this soup, bread, whatever you want. And Esau's like, man, you don't even understand. What good is a birthright to me? I'm about to die. I'm literally starving to death. What good is a birthright to me at all? So just give me some soup. So he verbally gave over his birthright. Didn't really think much of it until later, this begins to come into play. And the second time, Jacob, with the help of his mother, begins to trick dad, Isaac. Isaac is telling Esau, hey, I'm getting old, not being able to walk too well, can't see too well. My days are coming to an end. Could you please go out there, go hunt some game and fix me that thing I like that you make. And when I'm done eating, I'll lay my hands on you. I'll give you the family blessing. That way you can carry on this covenant, this line. Well, mom's over there listening, the tent with the glass or whatever, however she's eavesdropping. And she hears that. So she quickly gets up, goes tell Jacob, hey, your brother's out there hunting. He's going to get this family blessing. You're my favorite. I want you to have it. So this is what we're going to do. They devise a plan to where they go in and they get Esau's clothes and they put them on Jacob. And again, Isaac can't see too well, so he's going to have to use his senses in touching. So they get goat hair and they put it, I don't know how hairy Esau was, but goat hair on his arm. It's pretty thick. So they do that. The mom's cooking while Jacob's getting in the garb, and so they fix the meal. He goes in there, and in my head, it's a tent. They're picturing it's a little dimly lit. He goes in, he says, here I am. He's like, who are you? He says, I'm your son Esau. Brought the game to you, ready to eat. He said, come here, let me feel you. Feels the hair, he smells the clothes. He's like, yep, this is Esau. Then he places his hands on him and he gives him the family blessing. And then Jacob leaves. And this is really dysfunctional. This is a little twisted because this is the covenant line that's going to be passed down from generation to generation. Mom comes in, hijacks it. So later he eats, he's resting in bed again, and then Esau comes. Father, I got it here. And he's like, whoa, Isaac's freaking out. He's scared. He's like, who are you? He's like, I'm Esau, your friend. He's like, whoa, you just came in here. This just happened. Then he realizes he was tricked. Esau just is bitter. He's crying. And so now Jacob has to leave because now Esau is so bitter and full of revenge that he wants to kill his brother. And so they again devise a plan and they're getting him ready and they're like, hey, look, Jacob, you're going to get the family blessing. Dad's already blessed you, and he's going to reaffirm that blessing on him. And he says, but when you leave, do not go get a wife from the Hittites. Go to your mother's father, Bethuel, where Laban lives, and pick out one of his daughters to be with. And so that happens. Again, Esau hears, and he's angry. He leaves. And so what Esau does is he goes to Ishmael, his other uncle, which again, remember Abraham had Isaac and Ishmael. Ishmael was forced by human effort, so he wasn't the promised son. So I'm thinking that Esau, for some reason, either he wanted to get back at his family and go to the Hittite women, or he was like, maybe I can get back into this Abraham covenant line thing by just going to Ishmael. So he does that, and he takes a wife, adding to his wives. So now, fast forward, Jacob is on his way to Laban. And so right now I want to look at chapter 29, verse we'll look at verse 10 and we'll just read on through, and then we're just going to kind of hop on through reading and following along, and then I'll break it down the dysfunction and we'll try to get some application out of this. Another thing is, as I was reading through this, every time I look at the text now, I'm thinking, how can we get some application out of this? What fruit is there? And I could not find, at first I was like, well, obviously we don't want to do any of this stuff. So there are some applications, but when we look at this stuff, a lot of the stuff is like, yeah, you don't do that, and you don't do that, and you don't do that. So we'll pick up in verse 10, 29:10. And it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone away from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban's mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rebekah's son. So she ran and told her father. Then it came to pass, when Laban heard the report about Jacob's sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. So he told Laban all these things. And Laban said to him, surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him for a month. And that was customary. Usually it was 3 days in work, and if they agreed with it, and they would let you stay longer. So this was all falling into place and according to their customs. 15. Then Laban said to Jacob, because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what should your wages be? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. Now we'll stop there. That verse 17, Leah's eyes were delicate. Now I know a lot of, you look at it and you're like, what was wrong with Rachel? And when a lot of people look at the text, well, she was not attractive is what they would say, but the word for delicate means weak. And so just to help Leah out a little bit, to not call her unattractive, the weak part means that the paleness. So she may have not have been, how do I say this? I have people in my family that we're Hispanic, but some of us are paler than the others. They have lighter eyes, lighter skin color. So I'm thinking this is what may have happened here. Again, just really try not to call Leah ugly is what I'm trying to do. Yeah. So, she was more pale, didn't have the features maybe that they were used to. So Jacob was more attracted to Rachel. So 18. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, for the younger daughter. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to another man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed only a few days to him because he loved her that much, or he had love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go into her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. Now this is where the dysfunction is really going to kick in. Now it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah, his daughter, the pale one, and brought her to Jacob. And when he went into her, and Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter, Leah as a maid. So it came to pass in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this you've done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me? And Laban says, it was just a prank, bro. No, he didn't say that. But I mean, just thinking about that, what do you do in that moment, that situation to where you're engaged to a woman, you've given your dowry of 7 years of service working, and not only that, but God is blessing Laban through Jacob, and now the switch begins. I'm sure they got him pretty drunk, and it was customary for them to do the celebration. They had the veil over Leah, and then they did that little swap, and that's really deceiving. So the trickster, Jacob, got tricked. He's getting a taste of his own medicine. This is not going to be the first time this is going to happen. So here we go. Laban, verse 26 said, it must not be done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her a week, and we will give you this one also for the service which you will serve with me still another 7 years. Then Jacob did, and so fulfilled the week. So he gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife also. And Laban gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as a maid. Then Jacob also went into Rachel, and he also loved Rachel more than Leah. and he served with Laban still another 7 years. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So Leah conceived, bore a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, the Lord has surely looked on my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. Then she conceived again and bore a son, and said, because the Lord had heard that I am unloved, he therefore given me the son also. And she called his name Simeon. She conceived again and bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, now I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she stopped bearing children. So I'm not going to go through the whole 30 and 31. So we're just going to begin to just walk our way through it. So in verse 31, 1 through 21, the competition between the sister wives is demonstrated by using their maids as surrogate mothers. So again, Rachel's not able to have children, so she grabs her handmaid as a surrogate mother, and she allows her to, Rachel lays back and the maid's in front of her, so almost like she's, again, a surrogate mother, but as if that's her child. And so they also bartered time with Jacob with mandrakes. We read that in the story. Mandrakes back then were a sort of an aphrodisiac. And so they accused one another for stealing Jacob's favor. An example is the naming of one of Rachel's sons, Naphtali, which means wrestled with. And she even says, I wrestled with my sister. So there's a big struggle going on here. Rivalries, there's revenge being wanted. And the race for children is also accompanied by prayers to the Lord by acknowledgement of his providence. So in the midst of all this, they were still praying to God, thanking God for all these children. And God was still allowing Rachel, Leah, to bear children. And this bitter and intense rivalry, all the more fierce though they were sisters, and even though they occupied different dwellings with their children as customary, shows that evil lay in the system itself of bigamy. And bigamy is just already having a wife and then going to bear another wife and then adding to that. So again, this is a violation of God's ordinance according to Genesis 2:24, and they could not yield happiness in any way because they're breaking this covenant. And so now we're going to move on to some more dysfunction. And so they're having children back and forth, and it comes time to where Jacob's ready to get out of there. And he tells Laban that he's ready to go, and Laban's like, no, you don't have to go. Why so soon? Come work for me more. And so they devise a plan, and Jacob's like, look, man, I serve God. Again, Jacob has a theology because through Abraham, I'm sure Abraham and Isaac's not going to forget the day that Abraham almost sacrificed him. So this theology is being carried on. These stories are being, they didn't have TV, they didn't have internet. So when you're around with the family, just like what we do sometimes, we sit down, we talk about the past. So they have a theology of God. And so again, Laban is as Jacob's being reminded, because before he left, God said that he would bring him back to that spot. After he was fruitful, multiplied, then I will bring you back safely. So the time is coming near. Jacob's like, hey, I got to go. Give me what's mine. I've accumulated all this wealth. You've been blessed because of me. And Laban wasn't having it. He said, first Jacob devised a plan. Let me just get the speckled goats, the streaked goats. I'll be out of your way. Laban, again, deceiving Jacob. He's like, you know what? That sounds good to me. Go ahead and do that. We'll do that. Take the streak, the speckled goats. Be on your way. It's all good. Well, on the back end of that, Laban goes and tells his sons, hey, y'all go through the herd and get every one of those speckled and streaked goats out of there. That way, Jacob's got to stick around a little bit longer with the daughters, with the children. So they go and do just that. And they put a 3 days journey between those goats and Jacob. So now Jacob took himself, and Laban said, oh, that it was according to your word. We already did that. Well, let's just go into, again, Jacob was a sheep herder already with his dad and now with him. So he knew a little bit about breeding and how to get that recessive gene going. Not only that, but Scripture says that he would peel back these poplar and these almonds and stick them in the water and they would mate. And this would have to have been some kind of Jacob's form of knowledge of getting these animals to be in heat by putting an aphrodisiac in the water, so that way they can again grow. And so he began to breed his animals, and they began to be speckled and streaked, and so they were strong as well. So he gathered his flock, built them all back up, and this time he was ready to go. And so he tells his sister wives, hey, God, I have got to get back to where God had put me, where he told me I need to be at. The wives agree, and they're like, you know what, there's nothing here for us. All that we have is yours. You've accumulated all this wealth. Let's go. And so they begin to flee from Laban at the middle of the night, or I'm assuming in the middle of the night. They leave a 3 days journey between them and the family. The brothers finally figure out, hey, sister wives are gone, Jacob's gone, the kids are gone. Laban quickly gets up, gets a band together, and they go pursue him. It takes about a week for them to finally catch up. And so they finally do, and Laban is just letting them have it. And he's saying, what have you done? This is verse 26 in chapter 31. What have you done that you have stolen away, unknown to me, and carried away my daughters like captives taken with the sword? Why did you flee away secretly and steal away from me and not tell me? For I might have sent you away with joy and songs and a timbrel and a harp, which is a lie because we know Laban by now. And you did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you have done foolishly in doing so. It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad. And now you have surely gone because you greatly long for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? So now there's another little issue, that when Jacob fled Laban, Rachel actually went in and stole their family god, and so that's where we're at now. And Jacob's upset. He's like, hey, if you think I did wrong to you, and not only that, but Laban is calling Rachel and Leah, those are my girls, and those are my children, when clearly Jacob served 7 years for each of them. So those are rightfully his wives, those are his children. But again, Laban's tripping, and he's like, this is mine, I want this. And so we're moving forward through that. And so they reconcile, and they put a heap of stones between them and make a covenant. And he's like, we're in agreement that as long as you don't pass this with intention to harm for me, I won't pass this with an intention to harm for you. And that was it. That was that. They left. And so now Jacob is finally able to be free from Laban and his brothers and journey back to where God had originally promised him that he would bring him back to. And the situation with that is now going back home means he's got to go meet Esau again. This is the brother that he's been running away from for about 20 years now. And so it comes in chapter 32, verse 3, that Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, and he commanded them, saying, speak thus to my lord Esau, thus your servant Jacob, I have dwelt with Laban and stayed there until now. I have oxen, donkey, flocks, and male and female servants, and I have sent to tell my lord that I may find favor in your sight. Then the messenger returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he is also coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him. So Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that were with him and the flocks and the herds and the camels and into two companies. And he said, if Esau comes to the one company and attacks it, then the other company which is left will escape. And this is a good part right here, because now this is the second time in the Bible that we have a recorded prayer from Jacob. And this is actually, let's get into that. Then Jacob said, O God, my father, Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, return to your country and to your family, and I will deal with you. I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which you have shown your servant, for I crossed over this Jordan with my staff, and now I have become two companies. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and attack me, and the mother with the children. For you said, I will surely treat you well and make your descendants as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for a multitude. So here, perfect model of a prayer, because now Jacob is humbly coming to the Lord, full of anxiety, and he just lets out. And not only that, but he rehearses and repeats back what God said to him, because God said that he would do this thing. And so he does just that. He uses that word perfectly. I don't want to get ahead of myself. And so they keep going. So he lodged there the same night, and he took what came to his hand as a present for Esau's brother, 200 female goats and 20 male goats. So they eventually began the process of the first herd goes through, then the second, and then the third. And Jacob actually stays behind. He's scared. And a quick story that I found application in this, it's a little strange, but I had a brother who spent some time in prison. And when he came out, he had a little get together. And man, our relationship while he was in prison kind of separated. I would write him letters, and then all of a sudden the writing stopped and no feedback. And so I know what this feels like, because when I heard he was back and he was home, my mom was like, "Oh, your brother's out." Yeah. I was like, "Oh man, how's he going to take this? How am I going to take this?" And so I remember finally driving out there to Oak Cliff and seeing my brother from a distance, and everybody's hugging him, and I was just nervous, anxious. I was like, "What is he going to say something to me? Is this going to be a good thing?" And so me taking the lead of this is, I promise I did this. I sent Scarlett ahead first, and then I sent Isabel, and then I sent Sarah, and I waited back until he saw me, and then we embraced. And it was a beautiful thing. But again, I had this in my head because, again, I look for application anywhere I can. And this is exactly what happened here. Before that happened, before the embrace, again, Jacob's just hanging out. He's probably anxious. And then all of a sudden he's tackled by a man, and they fight all night. Almost to the point where, day breaks and he's not letting this dude go. And he finally says, "Let me go." He wouldn't let him go, so he hit his hip. And then he come to find out this is God. And he says here in, let's go back. Verse 26, and he said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." And he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and with men and prevailed." And this is a silly question, I think, that Jacob asked. Then Jacob asked, saying, "Tell me your name, I pray." But he just said, "You wrestled with God." But I thought that was funny. And he said, "Why is it that I ask you about my name?" And he blessed him there. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. And so that's whenever after that, Jacob and Esau finally embrace, and they hug each other, kissing each other on the neck, and all is well. And Jacob still calling Esau master, and pretty much him his servant, which is backwards, but he's trying to get in his good side. And so Jacob's like, "Hey, take this, the goats, everything I have. Let me share my wealth with you. God has been blessing me." He was hesitant at first. He took it. And then Esau says, "Well, come with us. Go with us to our house. Let's hang out more, get to know each other." And Jacob's like, "No, I got young kids here. Animals are still nursing. It's just not a good time for me." And Esau's persistent. "Well, let me leave my people with you, man. If you need help." No, Jacob's tell him, "No, I got this. You go do your thing. I'm good here." And so Esau finally departs. He's like, "I'll meet you in Sur, no problem. We'll be there, a couple days journey." And he actually goes the opposite direction. So they split again. And as they split, Jacob came safely, this is verse 18 and 33. Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, finally makes it to Canaan, when he came from Paddan Aram, where Laban lives. And he pitched his tent before the city, and then bought the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem, the father of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected an altar there and called it El Elhoi Israel, God, the God of Israel. And then I'm going to briefly touch on this next chapter. It's really graphic. So Jacob actually has now a lot of children. He has one daughter, and this is where the Dinah story happens. Remember, they're now in the land of Canaan. They meet Shechem. So Dinah is young. She wants to know, what are the vibes like here in this city? Let me go out and check out the women here. And, so she actually goes out. She's greeting with the women. Shechem sees her and instantly just desires her, wants to have her. And so he goes and he takes her and he defiles her or he rapes her. And Jacob finds out. And he's oddly just mute about the situation. In my mind, maybe he's wanting to gather more information. Maybe he's using discernment. But the brothers find out. And maybe he was waiting to talk about it with the brothers. Like, hey, what should we do? But they find out. And they get into an uproar. And then Hamor comes and he's like, hey, Jacob, my son really loves your daughter Dinah. I want to make sure they are together. Let's get these kids married. And if we do that, then your sons can marry my daughters and our daughters, and they can marry, we can intermingle. It'll be great. Jacob says, yes, it sounds good. And he says, but I can't do that fully because I'm in a covenant relationship with my God. And if you want to be a part of us, you got to be like us. So in order for that, we're going to have to use this sign of a covenant, which is circumcision. And you got to circumcise all your men, and then we can intermingle. He's like, all right, we got it. We can handle that. They go, they circumcise the men. 2 days after being at home, laid up in bed, hurt and in pain, the brothers come and raid that place and kill every man there. They take the women, the children, the cattle, and Jacob is livid. He is upset that his sons went and did this. And he says, you've made me like stink in this place, obnoxious to these people. And let's see here. Verse 30 in 34. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have troubled me by making me obnoxious among the inhabitants of the land, among Canaanites, the Perizzites. And since I am few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me. I shall be destroyed by my household and I. But they said, should he treat our sister like a harlot? It's understandable. I have a sister, and if something happened, I would definitely be livid. I don't know if I would go as far as this, but I do get it. And so Jacob now has to return back to Bethel. And in verse 2 in chapter 35, it says, and Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, put away the foreign gods. This is about to be a revival. He's getting ready to get back and reunite with God and get into a good relationship with them. And Jacob said to his household and to all that were with him, put away the foreign gods that are among you, purify yourselves and change your garments. And that there is significance there. Just like, you would think changing your garments, just changing your clothes to go see God, but that has a lot to do with it. When you think of a judge, before they go behind that seat, they put the robes on. They have to change garments. So they're getting ready for another stature, another way to present themselves and to act and behave. And so again, they go on to Bethel and they journey there. And it says in verse 5, and they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities and that were all around them. And they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. Because remember, Jacob was scared, anxious, and man, you've murdered all these people. Now they're going to come after me. Now we're in trouble. Now we have to be in hiding. But by God's supernatural covering, and because he just went through revival with his people, and he's leading his people, God had supernaturally put the fear into these people, so now they weren't harmed. So now we're going on, and Rachel finally has a child. That's Joseph. And Joseph means to add to, because as Rachel was giving birth, and she did name him that, she knew in faith, or she had the faith that God would add to her another son. And while they were in Bethel, she had another son. And this is the only son that was actually born in the promised land. And this is going to be Benjamin. But as she was dying, in verse 17 of 35, we'll read, "Now it came to pass when she was in hard labor that the midwife said to her, 'Do not fear. You will have this son also.' And so